His Royal Highness Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, dead at 99. World leaders pay tribute to Queen Elizabeth's beloved husband and strongest support, as Britain mourns a generous family man and a revolutionary philanthropist.
Prince Philip earned the affection of generations here in the United Kingdom, across the Commonwealth and around the world.
The man who spent 70 years selflessly carrying out royal duties, remembered as a friend to many Australians.
There are many towering figures that the world has lost and known, but few have been before us in our lifetimes for such a long time.
This is SBS World News with Anton Enus.
Good evening. Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, was passionate about the welfare of young people, an advocate for the environment and wildlife, and he was a born leader who, even though he had no constitutional power, was the monarchy's rock throughout the Queen's 68 years on the throne. Across Australia, flags were flown at half-mast to mourn the death of the Duke of Edinburgh last night, a sign of respect to the royal consort who visited the country more than 20 times. While in the UK, thousands of mourners flocked to Buckingham Palace and Windsor Castle, leaving flowers and notes of affection for a man known for his no-nonsense approach. Well, joining us now from outside Windsor Castle is our chief international correspondent, Ben Lewis. Ben, good evening. Emotions must still be quite raw as Britain wakes up this morning.
I know, it's just so windy.
Good evening, Anton. Absolutely. And the thoughts of most today, of course, will be with the Queen. She has now begun an official period of mourning, and during that time she will not be required to carry out the normal duties of a head of state. We know that last night Prince Charles drove from his Highgrove estate here to Windsor Castle to spend some time with his mother. It has often been said that Prince Philip didn't want much of a fuss when he passed. Well, some level of fuss was always going to be inevitable because of his high-profile role in public life for so long and because of the esteem in which he was held by so many.
Flags at half-mast. The tolling of bells, and a notice at palace gates marking the death of Britain's longest-serving royal consort, husband to the Queen for 73 years.
Like the expert carriage driver that he was, he helped to steer the royal family and the monarchy so that it remains an institution indisputably vital to the balance and happiness of our national life.
At Windsor Castle, where Prince Philip spent his final weeks after being discharged from hospital, locals paid tribute to a man born on a Greek island who had dedicated his life to his adopted country.
Prince Philip's always been there. He's a stalwart, isn't he? And his service to the country, to the Queen and the rest of us, yeah, it's got to be done, hasn't it?
I feel kind of sad because he was always there for the Queen and by her side, so if she got got hurt or anything, he would always be there.
In London, hundreds left flowers outside Buckingham Palace, the feeling one of gratitude for the Duke's decades of service.
Deep sadness, not shock. He's 99 years old, he's been in hospital, but deep sadness. He's been a great man and the consort to our Queen for all my life.
Australian Melissa Trickey was at nearby Westminster Abbey when the news broke.
And it felt really significant, like standing there where they got married so many years ago. I'm sure that Prince Philip and I would not see eye to eye on many things, but I think I'm here because of the Queen, and I think about if I lost my husband, because I've only been with my husband 6 years, if I'd been with him for that long, my heart breaks for her.
This moment does present somewhat of a dilemma for police. Lockdown laws are still in place in England, and normally a gathering of this size would attract fines. But for now, officers are simply asking people to pay their respects and move on.
Palace officials later urging people to stay away from royal residences for their own well-being. The Duke of Edinburgh will not have a state funeral and will not lie in state, in line with his wishes. Instead, he will lie in rest in Windsor Castle before a royal ceremonial funeral at St George's Chapel on the castle grounds. The low-key send-off he had requested will be even more private because of coronavirus. Those who knew him will remember him as a man often ahead of his time, particularly on matters of conservation, and as a moderniser of the monarchy.
I think he leaves a legacy of imagination, of entrepreneurialism, of saying, I will not accept that things need to go downhill. I will not accept that things need to be bad. We can be profoundly ambitious.
Until his retirement in 2017, he carried out more than 22,000 solo public engagements and made more than a few gaffes.
Where do you come from, Roger? I come from the Philippines. Philippines, I say half empty. They're all here. Running the NHS.
But palace staff don't think he set out to offend.
I think he was more of an extrovert, and I think he genuinely enjoyed meeting people. He had a very good, if wicked, sense of humour, and it actually helps to put people at their ease.
Philip had no constitutional role, but believed his greatest duty was to support his wife and therefore the institution she represents.
The main lesson that we've learnt is that tolerance is the one essential ingredient of any happy marriage. It may not be quite so important when things are going well, but it is absolutely vital when things get difficult. And you can take it from me that the Queen has the quality of tolerance and abundance.
Always walking a few paces behind the Queen, they raised 4 children in the most abnormal of circumstances.
His energy was astonishing in supporting my mama and doing it for such a long time, and in some extraordinary way, being able to go on doing it for so long. What he's done has amounted to an astonishing achievement, I think.
It was always a challenging role to take, but he's done it with the most extraordinary flair and an extraordinary tact and diplomacy. He's never, ever tried to overshadow the Queen in any way, shape or form. And I think he's always been there as that rock in the Queen's life.
And certainly within his family, that was exactly the same.
An extraordinary partnership vital to the success of her reign.
He is someone who doesn't take easily to compliments. He has quite simply been my strength and stay all these years. And I and his whole family, and this and many other countries, owe him a debt greater than he would ever claim, or we shall ever know.
So, Ben, what happens now? What do we know about the funeral arrangements?
Well, Anton, the plans for Prince Philip's funeral had been set many, many years ago, as is the case with all senior royals, but of course changes have had to be made because of coronavirus. It will be scaled down and there will be no public involvement. For example, there will be no procession in central London. We know it's going to be held inside the walls of Windsor Castle. What we don't know is exactly which day it will be taking place. We understand that the Queen is meeting with her senior advisors this morning to make that decision, and it will be revealed to the public a few hours after that.
And Ben, given recent revelations, do you think we will be seeing Prince Harry and Meghan Markle returning to Buckingham Palace?
Do we have time to do the second answer again?
Well, we're likely to see at least one of them. Despite that well-publicised royal rift, it is thought that Prince Harry will be flying back to the United Kingdom from California. He was very close with his grandfather, and of course they had that common history of military service. It is unlikely that his wife Meghan will be travelling given her pregnancy at the moment, but the Duke and Duchess of Sussex did leave a tribute to Prince Philip on their website when he passed, praising his life of service. Anton, I'll be back from Windsor Castle a little bit later with more details of the tributes planned over the next 24 hours to the Duke of Edinburgh.
Thanks, Ben. That is our Chief International Correspondent, Ben Lewis, reporting from the UK. A life of loyalty, honour and at times a larrikin edge. That's how Australia's political leaders have remembered the Duke and his indelible mark on the nation. Late this afternoon, a 41-gun salute outside Parliament House marked the passing of His Royal Highness.
Calling time on a remarkable legacy.
We say farewell to another of the greatest generation.
The royal goodbye reverberating across the country.
We send our love to you, our Queen. We join you in your mourning and your sadness.
His affection for Australia clear in his patronage. More than 20 visits over his 99 years.
Celebrating the 16th Olympiad.
From opening the 1956 Melbourne Olympics, touring the country by car, train and plane.
He also became an enduring part of the story of our nation.
Being patron for dozens of Australian organisations, championing causes for conservation and for young Australians, and adding the official stamp, always with a wry smile.
You're going to watch the world's leading plaque unveiler at work.
He was a popular, engaged and welcome visitor to our shores. His impact was profound.
That style winning him support from even the staunchest Republicans.
I'm not trying to suggest he was a kind of a radical greenie, but he was I think his views on the environment were those of a responsible Conservative.
Former Labor Prime Minister Julia Gillard recalls fond memories of a man of duty with a sense of fun. Tony Abbott imploring people to be uplifted by his example. An example Mr Abbott rewarded controversially in 2015 with a knighthood.
Well, I'm really pleased that the Queen has seen fit to award knighthoods in the Order of Australia to Prince Philip.
The Duke sometimes courted his own controversy.
He had a great sense of humour. He gave short shrift to political correctness when he encountered it, and that endeared him to millions of people.
Not always, though. A question to Indigenous performers during a visit to Queensland sparking outrage.
In one of his many embarrassing moments, the Prince asked the men if they still threw spears at their neighbours.
But today, flags lowered with the hearts of many. And the Prime Minister's personal message.
I am sure her Prince would join me in saying, God save our gracious Queen. Long live our noble Queen. God save our Queen.
And joining us now with more is our Canberra Bureau Chief, Anna Henderson. Anna, good evening to you. How is Australia paying tribute to the Prince?
Good evening, Anton. Well, just a few hours ago, there were spectators who came here to Parliament House to see that rare 41-gun salute. That's 21 guns for the Royal Salute and 20 guns because it's on royal land. Now, at the same time as there was that event today, we also know the Prime Minister tomorrow will be attending a special church service in Sydney along with the Governor-General. There will be further memorial services across the country. They will be arranged through local governments and local parliamentarians' offices. For those Australians who want to directly send their own thoughts, it's in fact now possible to do that online. And on top of that, if there are those who want to in any way donate or do anything to further any of the causes that the Duke of Edinburgh championed, they are urged by the royal family to do that rather than taking any other action.
Thanks. That's Anna Henderson updating us live from Canberra. Well, tributes to Prince Philip have been coming in from around the world. Leaders praised his work with young people, as well as his service to environmental causes and the Commonwealth.
Prince Philip, der Ehemann Philipp.
News of Prince Philip's death made headlines around the world. He'd visited dozens of countries, in some cases witnessing their transition from colony to Commonwealth.
And first to greet His Royal Highness was the Governor, Sir Maurice Dawn.
And it was the Commonwealth that led the tributes. He toured New Zealand 10 times with the Queen, the first in 1953.
He has served in support of Her Majesty the Queen for many, many years in her service to New Zealand, the Commonwealth and indeed the world.
In the Canadian capital, the bells tolled.
Prince Philip was a man of service, motivated by a sense of duty to others.
India's Prime Minister praised the Duke's many community service initiatives. while Pakistan's leader said his role in improving relations would always be remembered. Kenya's president said the Duke was a towering symbol of family values. Even Zimbabwe, no longer in the Commonwealth, expressed deepest condolences.
You should have seen His Royal Highness at the last Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. It was extraordinary. He brought spice and excitement wherever he went, and I don't think we'll see the like of him again.
As young newlyweds, the royal couple had spent 2 years on the island of Malta. Prime Minister Robert Abela said he was truly saddened by the loss of Prince Philip, who had made Malta his home. Prince Philip was born in Corfu, and Greece's president said he served his country for many decades. His time as the Queen's consort spanned 13 US presidents. Barack Obama recalled his nervousness about a state visit and how the Duke immediately put him at ease. The latest occupant of the White House, effusive in his praise.
He was a heck of a guy. He, it was his lifetime of service to the United Kingdom and the whole Commonwealth was visible to everybody for a long, long time.
Prince Philip was decorated for his service during the Second World War and maintained strong links with the armed forces. Chancellor Angela Merkel praised his friendship with Germany. The French President Emmanuel Macron said the Duke had led an exemplary life. One place where his loss will be keenly felt is the remote Pacific island of Tanna, part of Vanuatu, where for some the Duke had a cult-like status. Anthropologists say they will now most likely transfer their allegiance to Prince Charles. Nick Wells, SBS World News.
Coming up next, the rest of the day's news, including 19 people sentenced to death in Myanmar for murder. Anger from Indigenous communities ahead of the 30th anniversary of a landmark Royal Commission report. And remembering Prince Philip for his role in raising his children and grandchildren.
You feel so incredibly helpless. You might wake up on the floor.
Tuesday on Insight. What's it like to live with a chronic sleep disorder?
How often do you have night terrors? 4 to 5 times a night.
Do you get to the point where you're afraid of going to sleep because of what might happen?
Then at 9:30 on Dateline, how COVID exposed the true cost of fast fashion.
What is all of this stock that retailers, fashion brands could not sell?
That's Tuesday on SBS and On Demand.
We've been cooking up a fresh new show.
Start with some food-loving friends. Add a dash of spicy conversation and enjoy 5 nights a week.
The Cook Up with Adam Liao starts Monday 19th of April on SBS Food and On Demand.
Hey, wait!
It's the Michael Hill sale, and you just can't go past all these shiny new things. But these offers won't last. With hundreds of reductions in store and online, you'll step into autumn with plenty of shine. Michael Hill.
Don't be a tosser. If it's not in the bin, it's on you.
Great documentaries can change tomorrow.
All revolutions seem impossible until they are inevitable.
Demand different in 2021. SBS On Demand. It was one of the worst air disasters in history.
It's raining terrible. Mate, get out of the way, please.
Now, more than 80 years later...
And you believe that the film was shot with this camera?
Yes, I do.
A newly discovered film...
No, I've never seen this material. I've never seen it from this point of view.
...prompts a new investigation.
What is going on right now? Oh wow, that was significant.
Hindenburg, the new evidence. Tomorrow, 7:30 on SBS and on demand.
There are reports at least 60 people have been killed overnight by Myanmar's security forces in Bago division outside Yangon. It comes as 19 people have also been sentenced to death by the country's military over the alleged killing of an army captain's associate. It's the first such sentences to be handed down since the February the 1st coup.
In the town of Kalay in northwestern Myanmar, an onlooker discreetly films out of their window as gunshots are heard in the distance. The video capturing a man in a red jacket running for his life, pursued by more than a dozen armed soldiers. At least 5 shots fired at close range. It's unclear if they're live rounds, the fate of the man also unknown. What is clear, according to international observers, Myanmar is sinking further into crisis.
To put it simply, Myanmar stands at the brink of state failure, of state collapse. This is not hyperbole or rhetoric. It is my sober assessment of a likely path forward.
Opposition lawmakers urging the UN Security Council to take concrete action against the military.
Our people are ready to pay any cost to get back their rights and freedom.
The country's ambassador called for a no-fly zone to avoid further bloodshed caused by military airstrikes on civilian areas.
In order to save lives of innocent civilians in Myanmar, your collective strongest action is needed immediately.
In the capital, Naypyidaw, the junta showed off weapons it says were confiscated from its opponents. It also is now backing away from a promise to hold elections within a year. The country's current power structure could remain in place until 2023.
The state of emergency must be over within 2 years, and the elections must be held within 2 years. We must hold elections and transfer power to the winning party in the election.
Anti-coup protests were held yet again in parts of the country, including in Yangon, where reports have emerged that at least 60 civilians were killed overnight outside the city as security forces dismantled a barricade. According to an activist group, more than 600 people have now been killed in the crackdown over the past 2 months. The military disputes those figures and says 16 policemen have also died. Virginia Langerberg, SBS World News.
In a move likely to further escalate tensions with China, the US is loosening restrictions on Taiwanese contacts. The changes will allow American officials to invite officials from Taiwan into government buildings. They will also now be able to attend meetings at the Taiwan mission. The US has been increasingly vocal in its support for Taiwan, while publicly expressing its concern over China's military aggression in the Taiwan Strait. Chinese regulators have hit e-commerce giant Alibaba with a record $3.67 billion fine for monopolistic business practices. Beijing's market watchdog found that Alibaba had been abusing market dominance since 2015 by preventing its merchants from using other online e-commerce platforms. The move is the government's toughest action to date in its campaign to tighten control over the country's fast-growing tech giants. India has now more than 13 million cases of COVID-19. That's the 3rd highest rate in the world after the United States and Brazil. In the past 24 hours, the country reported a new record of over 145,000 fresh infections. It was also the highest number of deaths in more than 5 months, bringing fatalities to a total of more than 168,000 people. Most of the new cases are in the state of Maharashtra, where Mumbai, the country's largest city, is located. The government blames the fresh spike on crowding and a reluctance to wear face masks. Australia will start distributing more COVID-19 vaccines to Pacific Island nations later this month, as both Papua New Guinea and Timor-Leste fight major virus outbreaks. 10,000 locally manufactured AstraZeneca doses will be shipped out to the region every week starting from April the 19th. Doses will also be made available in the coming weeks to Fiji, the Solomon Islands and Vanuatu. Europe's drug regulator says it is investigating rare blood clots in 4 people in the US who received Johnson & Johnson's COVID-19 vaccine. The development comes ahead of the EU's planned rollout of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine in the next few weeks. Some countries changed their vaccine recommendations after an investigation of blood clots reported by some people given the AstraZeneca vaccine. Returning to the death of Prince Philip now, Britain's longest-serving consort is being remembered for sacrificing his promising naval career to support his wife, the Queen, and to play a key role in raising their young family, making him, according to one historian, an early house husband.
I, Philip, will become your liege man of life and limb.
By nature, a leader, a man's man, yet obliged to take second place. As the Queen's consort, Prince Philip's children couldn't take his family name, Mountbatten. He once told friends, "I am nothing but a bloody amoeba."
What is your job in your own mind?
Well, I haven't got one. I'm self-employed.
I think it shows a real understanding of the pressures that the Queen was going through, and that the best way he could support her was by giving up on his career.
Instead, he was given the major say in running the household.
He wore the trousers in the family in order that the Queen could wear the crown.
Here in Philip, we have almost the first sort of house husband. This is the 1950s.
In between the countless engagements with the Queen, he had his own interests. A passion for conservation put him ahead of his time, drawing attention by photographing seals in Antarctica. David Attenborough today hailing one he called a very effective, very rigorous president of the World Wildlife Fund. Maybe his greatest legacy was the Duke of Edinburgh Awards, now in over 140 countries. The program has introduced millions of young people to outdoor adventures and community service, springing from the Prince's own Spartan but enriching experience at Scottish private school Gordonston.
Once you've got a soccer hooligan, you've got a soccer hooligan, and somebody else is going to have to try and cure him of that. The purpose of the scheme basically is to try and catch people while they are moderately civilised still and keep them that way.
That kind of bluntness winning him a reputation for rudeness, even racial prejudice, telling British students in China they might become slitty-eyed. And here he was unapologetic about that gaffe over spears.
And the next day he came over, it made front pages all over the world, and he just wandered over and said, "The trouble with you is you've got no sense of humour, a complete absence of humour." So he wasn't going to apologise.
What the public didn't see, say royal insiders, was the Duke's caring. With the Queen, he tried to mediate in Charles's failing marriage. Then, when Princess Diana died in 1997, urging a reluctant William to walk in the funeral procession.
He took the long view and he said, "I think when you're older, you would very much regret not walking behind your mother's coffin." And also he said, "And I'll walk with you." And I think that's really everything that you need to know about Prince Philip as a grandfather.
Having first spoken against that royal obligation, Prince Harry has more recently said he's very glad to have been part of the day. At the age of 96, this was the Prince's last official solo public appearance, ending a career he doubted even existed, spanning more than 22,200 engagements. Raina Saram-Pyatt, SBS World News.
Across Australia, flags are being flown at half-mast as Australians remember Prince Philip and the contribution he made to the country.
Sailing in to one of Australia's most iconic sites.
From early morning, the Queen and the Duke...
The Queen and Duke of Edinburgh arrive in Sydney for the 1954 Royal Tour. More than 6 decades on, the city pays tribute to the man who would become a long-time friend to Australia. flags at half-mast across the country in a sign of condolence. In Melbourne, the Victorian Governor Linda Dessau laid a wreath at the gates of Government House. The Governor of New South Wales, Margaret Beazley, remembering Prince Philip for his remarkable legacy of bravery and ability to connect with Australians through his humour and appreciation of our character. In Western Australia, Perth's Lord Mayor Basil Zemplis said the city fondly remembers when the Queen and Prince Philip visited in 1963 and officially opened Council House.
The mourning of the British people is accompanied by our mourning. As he was a frequent visitor to this country, he held it in very high regard.
The Australian monarchist lead today mourning his passing. National Chair Philip Benwell met the Prince on several occasions.
He was a person that didn't just feign interest, he was actually interested in everything that he saw and did.
Australians invited to write messages of condolences, which will be passed on to Her Majesty the Queen. British expats also saddened by the news. Patrons at this unmistakably British pub today toasting the memory of Prince Philip. The 99-year-old's death, a key topic of conversation.
When something like this happens from back in the UK, I guess it's always going to be a topic of conversation to people. It's like a lot of people said, he's been around for so long. You sort of grew up with him, didn't you?
So we had a bit of a toast together to say, here's to Prince Philip.
Looking as part of the team. One of his biggest legacies, the Duke of Edinburgh's award.
We learned what we are made of.
Australia, among more than 130 countries to adopt the Youth Development Program.
I didn't think that I could accomplish a lot of things.
A passion project of the Prince.
Was he hands-on? Can I say 12 out of 10? He exceeded. He was a hands-on. He was a working chair, but he was also the lead salesman. He was the one that was out there advocating it.
I saw my confidence just shoot up.
Over the past 6 decades, close to 800,000 people in Australia have participated in the awards. The Prince's contribution to generations of Australians. Abby O'Brien, SBS World News.
Thousands of people have gathered to protest across the country on a national day of action to stop Indigenous deaths in custody. The rallies come ahead of the 30th anniversary of the Royal Commission into Aboriginal deaths in custody. And with more than 450 deaths since then, the overwhelming mood of the day was frustration.
30 years ago, protests at the release of the final report of the Royal Commission into Aboriginal deaths in custody.
Whose lives matter?
Now, a new generation faces the same fight.
While we're on that hype of knowing Prince Philip is dead, do we know that there were 5 Aboriginal deaths in custody in the last 5 weeks?
Today, rallies across the country. The Royal Commission made 339 recommendations, but 30 years on, very few have been implemented.
You get killed, they get murdered. The only way our people are coming out in body bags. We need your help.
At least 450 Indigenous Australians have died in custody since 1991. Tani Chatfield was one of them.
As expected, the recommendations that come down out of Tani's inquiry were the same recommendations that we heard 30 years ago.
She's calling for what so many before her have demanded: accountability.
I seem to see state and federal governments continuously pass the buck and not hold themselves accountable. So we demand an independent inquiry and independent investigations of Aboriginal deaths in custody.
The mood here today: exhaustion, frustration and anger. It's been 30 years since the Royal Commission ended, and the people we're speaking to say there just hasn't been enough progress.
Now Senator Patrick Dodson was the only Indigenous Commissioner. He remembers feeling hopeful back then. Today, a very different mood.
I'm saddened by the number of deaths that have occurred since the Royal Commission. I'm more appalled at the lack of implementation of the recommendations that we'd made.
Law enforcement officers have been charged over Indigenous deaths in custody, but in 30 years, none have ever been convicted.
There's been recommendations made by coroners that certain officers stand trial, and the problem then arose was police investigating police.
In a statement to SBS World News, Minister for Indigenous Australians Ken Wyatt said under Australia's federal system of government, states and territories are responsible for their respective criminal justice systems, including policing. The Australian government's focus is on addressing underlying factors that lead to incarceration. But researchers say the opposite is happening.
The basic finding of the Royal Commission was that we needed to get First Nations people out of jail, out of the justice system. And what we find now, looking back after 30 years, is not only have we not done that, we've made the situation much, much, much worse.
But those at today's rallies are determined to change that.
Always was, always will be.
And hoping they won't still be fighting this battle in another 30 years' time. Claudia Farhart, SBS World News.
The medical examiner who performed the only autopsy on George Floyd has told a US court he died from a police neck restraint, not drugs. Dr. Andrew Baker says Floyd did have underlying health issues and evidence of drug use, but neither directly caused his death. The former police officer, Derek Chauvin, is accused of killing Floyd by kneeling on his neck for more than 9 minutes.
The prosecution has produced a number of experts to say George Floyd died because of police action. Latest to appear in court, Lindsay Thomas, a forensic pathologist who reviewed the videos of the night in May and analysed all the photos and lab reports.
What it means to me is that the activities of the law enforcement officers resulted in Mr. Floyd's death, and that specifically those activities were the subdual, the restraint, and the neck compression.
And does this then also represent your own conclusion?
Yes.
A conclusion you have reached and an opinion you hold to a reasonable degree of medical certainty?
Yes.
She said police officers found no pulse in George Floyd as he lay on the ground, but continued to exert pressure on him. She ruled out drugs or heart disease as the cause of death, a theory put forward by the defence. She suggested if George Floyd had not encountered the police that night, he would still be alive.
Do you have an opinion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty if Mr. Floyd would have died that night had he not been subject to the subdual and restraint of the police?
There's no evidence to suggest he would have died that night, except for the interactions with law enforcement.
Another witness was Andrew Baker, the man who carried out the autopsy on George Floyd. He didn't watch any videos before his examination. He ruled the death was homicide.
I did not want to bias my exam by going in with any preconceived notions that might lead me down one pathway or another.
He said he found underlying heart issues in George Floyd, and the altercation with police would not have helped.
What that adrenaline is going to do is it's going to ask your heart to beat faster. It's going to ask your body for more oxygen so that you can get through that altercation. And in my opinion, the law enforcement subdual, restraint, and the neck compression was just more than Mr. Floyd could take by virtue of those heart conditions.
Under cross-examination, Dr. Baker agreed there were many factors involved in the death, that drugs and heart disease may have played a part. But he said they were contributing factors, not the direct cause of death. It's expected the prosecution will end its case early next week. The defence will then get the chance to present why it believes Derek Chauvin is not responsible for the death of George Floyd.
The United States House of Representatives has launched a bipartisan ethics investigation into Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz for sexual misconduct. The close ally of former President Donald Trump is already under investigation by the Justice Department over sex trafficking allegations.
Striding out with his fiancée, increasingly embattled Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz. The venue, the Trump Miami Golf Club. The event organisers, Women for America First, the same pro-Trump political group that helped organise the January 6 rally in Washington, held hours before the Capitol Hill riot.
I'm built for the battle, and I'm not going anywhere.
One of his Republican colleagues begs to differ, Congressman Adam Kinzinger, becoming the first Republican to demand his departure, tweeting, "Matt Gaetz needs to resign." The 38-year-old Florida Republican aggressively supported and campaigned for Donald Trump. Mr. Gaetz has just hired two prominent New York defense attorneys, including Mark Mukasey, who also represented the former president. His message to the Trump faithful, denial of all allegations of wrongdoing and defiance.
When you see the anonymous sources and insiders forecasting my demise, know this: they aren't really coming for me. They're coming for you. I'm just in the way.
The House Ethics Committee will investigate claims of sexual misconduct, illicit drug use, and whether he shared images of naked women while on the House floor. But it's his close association with fellow Floridian Joel Greenberg which is increasingly problematic. The former tax collector is in jail, charged with 33 criminal counts, including sex trafficking, and is considering a plea arrangement. His attorney suggesting that's bad news for the congressman.
I'm sure Matt Gaetz is not feeling very comfortable today.
Uncomfortable because the Justice Department is said to be investigating whether Gaetz and Greenberg together paid for or offered gifts to underage girls for sex. Matt Gaetz propagating the false claim that Donald Trump won in 2020.
And an election that was stolen as a consequence of illegal last-minute changes to the rules.
An attack dog for the former president, who might now speak out to support him, is being closely watched. Prulawan, SBS World News.
Coming up next, evacuation warnings as tropical cyclone Saroja closes in on the West Australian coast. Plus, the Australian festival where you can experience thousands of years of culture in a single moment. And the Australian contingent mounts its challenge at Augusta National.
Good drama entertains you.
Hello, girls.
Great drama changes you.
He's going down. He's going to take me with him.
Demand different.
We don't hide. We fight.
No matter where the war finds you today, just remember, we are still here.
Demand different in 2021. SBS On Demand.
Last night something very sad happened.
What did she do?
Is everything you said here a lie? They were my family!
Dead Water Fell starts Wednesday 21st of April on SBS and On Demand.
When we say Queensland is good to go, it's not just because a holiday here will do you the world of good.
It means our tourism and event operators are ready to welcome you. G'day, Matty.
With gold standard health practices. Hey guys, this is for you.
From deep cleaning to social distancing.
And COVID-safe events.
Plus, flexible booking options in case plans need to change.
So book your holiday now.
Yep, Queensland is good to go.
Oh. Shut up and take my money.
Gross.
Hey Siri, can you get us to the dog wash?
Good champ.
The Yaris Cross. Small now has it all. Oh, what a feeling. Toyota.
When it comes to the health and well-being of your family, choose Australia's #1 multivitamin, Swiss Ultivite multivitamin from Chemist Warehouse. Add a tailored formula to your morning to support energy production and a healthy stress response in the body. Right now at Chemist Warehouse, Swiss men's and women's Ultivite multivitamin are $29.99 each. Find the one that's right for you with Swiss multivitamins, tailored for the whole family. Live, look, feel well at Chemist Warehouse.
We only curate the brave, the bold, and the great. We're talking about these issues in ways that were unthinkable even a decade ago.
Change never comes easy. This war isn't going to win itself.
Demand different in 2021.
We're just getting started.
SBS On Demand.
Massive moment. And he goes bang!
Oh my goodness!
The Sydney Kings versus the South East Melbourne Phoenix tomorrow at 3 on SBS Viceland and On Demand.
Western Australians along the mid-west coast are being urged to closely follow emergency warnings this evening as tropical cyclone Roger inches closer to the coastline. A blue alert is currently in place from Coral Bay in the north to Lancelin in the south. The cyclone's intensity strengthened overnight and residents have been warned it's expected to make landfall tomorrow.
Cyclone Roger is expected to cross the coast as a Category 2 system on Sunday night, with destructive wind gusts up to 150 kilometres an hour.
Members of the community, I can't stress this enough. This is an extremely rare event. There's going to be adverse conditions, and you need to listen to all the warnings that are giving out.
Holidaymakers were urged to flee the region this morning. The cyclone's strength is likely to cause significant damage to caravans and tents. Residents are also being warned to expect minor house damage, with few houses in the region built to withstand cyclone strength. A severe weather warning is also in place tonight for the Exmouth Gulf due to ex-tropical cyclone Odette. That storm is not expected to make landfall, but is bringing strong winds. The New South Wales State Coroner is considering whether to hold a new inquest into the Luna Park ghost train fire that claimed 7 lives in 1979. The coroner says a formal request has been made to New South Wales Police to conduct a review of all evidence concerning the cause and origin of the fire. It follows a documentary series that uncovered new evidence alleging corruption and a cover-up of arson. To the Northern Territory now, and where ancient stories once carved in rock and drawn in sand have been given a modern twist through Australia's only Indigenous-run and crafted light show, Pajima.
Hidden in the red dunes of eastern Aranda country, just over an hour southeast of Alice Springs, Karinga Arts in Santa Teresa is giving artists a way to connect to their roots and put into practice a craft taught by their ancestors.
I feel so happy that I'm following in their footsteps.
Chantel Mulladad has been painting since she was a teenager. Her work, Crossroads, showcased in this year's Pajima Light Festival, detailing her struggle to find the right path as she entered adulthood.
Yeah, I get my inspiration from going at bush, seeing the colours and talking stories.
This year, Pajima pushed the boundaries of what most people consider a conventional gallery, displaying Miss Mulladad's work on 3 carriages of Australia's transcontinental train, the Garn.
I'm feeling so excited, seeing my painting on the train.
And while Miss Mulladad was full of pride seeing her work featured this way, she wasn't the only one impressed.
I thought it was a great way of getting to know my new country that I'm living in.
It gave the train a bit of colour.
Thousands from across Australia descended on Alice Springs for the 10-night festival. And as the sun sets across the West Macdonald Ranges, the 160,000-watt display will begin to illuminate the heart of the Central Desert.
We walk in the ancient footsteps of our ancestors.
Pajima did go ahead during the pandemic last year, but this year has seen an influx of tourists looking for a way to connect back to country.
Taking it from the canvas to putting it into a light installation is really about taking those age-old imprints and putting it into new technology.
It's also given artists a way to reflect.
This gives them a platform to tell the stories, whether they're really ancient stories or they're new modern stories like the Garn.
Passing on stories like Chantel Mulladad's to a 21st century audience. Anita Bole, SBS World News.
Following last year's cancellation because of the coronavirus pandemic, stallholders at Sydney's Royal Easter Show are back in full swing this year. And Australian agriculture is also forecast to hit a new record value of $66 billion this financial year. It's a relief for farmers and rural producers after a year of natural disasters, as Small Business Secrets discovered.
It is the biggest show in Australia and we always love to be part of it.
It wouldn't be a show without show food, as the stallholder knows after 20 years on the circuit.
We've got the most popular show food at the show, and it's called chip on a stick. We take each potatoes individually hand cut. We put it in the machine, we swirl it. Once it's come out, we twist it onto a bamboo skewer. We dip it in a special batter, which has got our special ingredients in there. Next rating, please.
Deep migrated from Kenya 22 years ago, and his business depends on shows like this, which made its 2020 cancellation even harder.
Last year, March, our trucks were packed, the trailers were packed, everything was ready to go. Everything got shut down.
Even this year, coronavirus restrictions have forced the closure of half of all agricultural shows.
Massive impact. You look at your email, it just says cancel, cancel, cancel. So we were lucky we had some savings and we were living off the savings.
For some small businesses here, the crowds of 60,000 people a day are making up for a year without markets.
We are at the Royal Easter Show for our first time. We are very happy to be here.
It's a busy week for this business. Sandrine migrated from Paris. Her French husband makes resin jewellery in collaboration with Aboriginal artists.
Our website is called Shared Dreaming. It says it all.
For these vegetable growers originally from Malta, just being able to exhibit again is a dream come true.
It's lovely to see the crowds and to be back. It's really fantastic. We love it. We love it.
Agricultural produce is forecast to hit a record value of $66 billion this financial year, one of many big achievements being celebrated here.
We've been told that the Sydney Royal Easter Show is the largest ticketed event in the world since the COVID pandemic.
After adapting to survive coronavirus, farmers and show organisers hope the good times are here to stay. Catalina Flores, SBS World News.
And for more stories, turn to Small Business Secrets episodes tomorrow at 7 a.m. and 5 p.m. on SBS, or go online at any time. Just click on the Small Business Secrets tab on the SBS News website or at SBS On Demand. Well, Lucy Zelich is here with sport now, and a number of Aussies in the hunt for Masters glory.
Oh, they are, and it's been fabulous to watch. Good evening to you, Anton. Indeed, Australian Mark Leishman has charged into contention at Augusta National, keeping alive his dream of a first ever green jacket. Standing in his way, though, is Justin Rose, who has a one-shot lead at 7 under, while Australians Cameron Smith and Matt Jones are also under par heading into the third round. Also lurking ominously is Jordan Spieth, who posted a second round 68 to move to fourth. Smith's round was going swimmingly until a bogey on the 14th hole was followed by this shot into the water on the very next hole, leading to a double bogey. Leishman's burst into contention coming off the back of a round of 67.
I think I've learned that you have to take each day as it comes, and because the course can change. It's the Masters, so yeah, I'm excited for the next 2 days, but this is why I came here. This is the position I wanted to be in.
Adam Scott will feature this weekend, but Jason Day missed the cut for the second straight year, and South Korean Siwoo Kim took his frustration out on his putter, playing the final 4 holes without one. Don't worry, we've all been there. Tennis now, and world number 1 Ash Barty has been denied a spot in the semi-final of the Charleston Open. Unseeded Spaniard Paula Badosa defeated the Australian in straight sets, 6-4, 6-3. Barty dropped serve 5 times throughout the match. In key moments, the world number 71 broke Barty's serve, including in the final game of the match, to progress to her 4th WTA semi-final.
I can't believe it. I still can't believe it that I just beat #1 in the world. I was quite nervous today, but I think I served very well. I think that was the key of the match.
Badosa will play Veronika Kurdamatova tomorrow. To football, and the Matildas are just a few hours away from playing their first international match since qualifying for the Tokyo Olympics a year ago. Experienced midfielder Emily Van Egmond says tonight's clash against reigning gold medalists Germany is a crucial one for Australia in their lead up to the Games in July. It's also the Matildas' first game under new coach Tony Gustafsson.
A lot of learning aspects with his philosophy and what he wants to bring to the table, and I think we've adapted quite well in the short amount of time that we've had. So yeah, looking to put that all into place, obviously, for the game tomorrow against Germany.
Following the friendly match against Germany, the Matildas take on the Netherlands on Wednesday morning. Surfing now, and Australian rookie Isabella Nichols is pursuing her first World Surf League victory. She's qualified for the Newcastle Cup final and will take on four-time world champion Carissa Moore. In the men's competition, rookie Morgan Sibilic registered an impressive quarter-final triumph over fellow local Ryan Callanan. Callanan says there's no hard feelings as Sibilic advanced to the semi-final against Gabriel Medina.
Having another local, I guess it's kind of a win-win for everyone on the beach, but obviously one of us has to lose in that situation, which is a bit of a bummer, but hopefully Morgs can win the thing.
What a good sport. The Adelaide Crows are to host next Saturday's AFLW Grand Final at Adelaide Oval following an 18-point win over Melbourne in the preliminary final. Erin Phillips was prominent with 2 goals, while Anne Hatchard, Eloise Jones and Chloe Shear also booted majors. The Crows are chasing their 3rd flag and will face the Brisbane Lions in the decider. Looking forward to that one. And Anton, that'll do me today. That's the day in sport.
Thanks very much, Lucy. Coming up, the weather, and we'll return to London for the latest reaction to the death of Prince Philip.
It was one of the worst air disasters in history.
It's raging terrible. Mike, get out of the way, please.
Now, more than 80 years later...
And you believe that the film was shot with this camera?
Yes, I do.
A newly discovered film...
No, I've never seen this material. I've never seen it from this point of view.
...prompts a new investigation.
What is going on right now? Oh, wow, that was significant.
Hindenburg, the new evidence. Tomorrow, 7:30 on SBS and on demand.
Stop!
He needs to stop doing that.
I said stop!
Probably likes her.
That's it. Oh! Man up! You're playing like a girl! Come on!
He does this all the time. He just misses me. Stop!
That doesn't matter. There's no excuse.
Yeah, we need to chat with him.
Hey.
We all have the power to end violence. If you see disrespect, unmute yourself. Authorised by the Australian Government, Canberra.
G'day, Sue. Join me for a walk?
I'd love to, but my legs are aching.
I had the same problem. You need Revitive.
New Revitive Medic is the circulation booster that gets my leg muscles pumping, which could relieve aches and pains, swelling and now cramps.
Plus, it's drug-free.
It's truth. Someone got Revitive. And now discover new Medic Coach with personalised therapy for maximum leg pain relief.
This Mother's Day, get your new Revitive Medic.
When I grow up, I change the world. One stereotype at a time.
You know how to live your best life. Aruma, Disability Services, putting you first.
What do you call huge deals store-wide?
On TVs and tech.
Washers and fridges?
Cooking appliances, blenders, coffee machines and much more.
That are on right now.
The Bingley April sale.
But it's only until April 18th.
At Bingley.
The sky over the township of Cobden in Western Victoria is full of stars. And there's also quite a few stars in Cobden. At ground level, Western Star, more than butter.
You feel so incredibly helpless. You might wake up on the floor.
Tuesday on Insight. What's it like to live with a chronic sleep disorder?
How often do you have night terrors? 4 to 5 times a night. Do you get to the point where you're afraid of going to sleep because of what might happen?
Then at 9:30 on Dateline, how COVID exposed the true cost of fast fashion.
What is all of this stock that retailers, fashion brands could not sell?
That's Tuesday on SBS and on demand.
To the weather now, and tropical cyclone Saroja and ex-tropical cyclone Odette remain to the northwest of WA, causing storms and winds to increase. Another trough is triggering a few showers and storms in the northern tropics. In the major centres, shower or two in Darwin, partly cloudy in Brisbane and Canberra, sunny in Sydney, showers easing in Melbourne, cloudy in Adelaide, showers in Hobart and Perth. Looking further afield, a few showers in Auckland, partly cloudy in Christchurch, thunder in Nadi, clouds in Noumea. In Southeast Asia now, thunder in Bangkok, drizzle in Jakarta, thunder also in Port Moresby and rain ahead in Honiara. Further north, drizzle in Hanoi, partly cloudy in Hong Kong, fine in Manila, rain ahead in Shanghai, fine in Taipei, partly cloudy in Tokyo. Heading west, fine in Baghdad, partly cloudy in Beirut, wind in Delhi, partly cloudy in Islamabad, a few showers in Tehran. On to Europe now, fine in Athens, clouds in Berlin and Budapest, showers in London, fine conditions in Moscow, a few showers in Paris, and rain also in Rome. In Africa, partly cloudy in Algiers, fine in Cairo, partly cloudy in Casablanca, fine conditions in Dakar, thunder in Lagos. In South America, thunder in Asunción, cloudy in Bogotá, drizzle in Buenos Aires, showers in La Paz, fine in Santiago. And for North America, showers in New York City, rain in Chicago, fog in Los Angeles, fine conditions in Mexico City, and a few showers about in Havana. A volcano on the eastern Caribbean island of St. Vincent has erupted, sending dark plumes of ash and smoke billowing 10 kilometres into the sky. Thousands of people from surrounding villages have been evacuated. Called La Soufrière, which means sulphur outlet in French, the volcano first started showing signs of activity in December after lying dormant since 1979. An eruption in 1902 killed more than 1,000 people. In our top stories tonight, there are reportedly 60 people have been killed overnight by Myanmar's security forces in Bago division outside Yangon. Civilians were reportedly shot at with live ammunition as security forces started dismantling a barricade set up by the protesters. Thousands of people have gathered to protest across the country in a national day of action to stop Indigenous deaths in custody. And Australia's only Indigenous-run light show, Pajima, has kicked off in the Northern Territory. It'll run for the next 10 nights across a 2-kilometre stretch of the West Macdonald Ranges. And returning to our top story once again, Prince Philip has died, aged 99. Across Australia, flags are being flown at half-mast as Australians remember Prince Philip and the contribution he made to the country.
Sailing in to one of Australia's most iconic sites.
From early morning, the Queen and the Duke...
The Queen and Duke of Edinburgh arrive in Sydney for the 1954 Royal Tour. More than 6 decades on, the city pays tribute to the man who would become a long-time friend to Australia. Flags at half-mast across the country in a sign of condolence. In Melbourne, the Victorian Governor Linda Dessau laid a wreath at the gates of Government House. The Governor of New South Wales, Margaret Beazley, remembering Prince Philip for his remarkable legacy of bravery and ability to connect with Australians through his humour and appreciation of our character. In Western Australia, Perth's Lord Mayor Basil Zemplis said the city fondly remembers when the Queen and Prince Philip visited in 1963 and officially opened Council House.
The mourning of the British people is accompanied by our mourning. As he was a frequent visitor to this country, he held it in very high regard.
The Australian monarchist lead today mourning his passing.
Updating our top story once again, the death of Prince Philip at the age of 99. Let's go back to Ben Lewis at Windsor Castle. And I don't think we have Ben at the moment. That is the World this Saturday. Sorry, we weren't able to establish contact with our chief international correspondent. If you've missed some of tonight's bulletin, you can catch up on the SBS News website shortly. And also a reminder, you can watch the bulletin live there or on the SBS News app. I'll be back with more news throughout the evening. Stay tuned now for the SBS special Prince Philip an extraordinary life. From the team,